until we saw Army of Darkness.
Uh-huh.
And then that became the craziest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah. It's pretty out there.
Something that I'm watching now, which is also kind of crazy, is, and I'm way too late on this for this to be interesting, but they're releasing sort of a prequel to Dexter, the Showtime show about the sexy vigilante, sexy hero, sexy serial killer. I think Michael C. Hall is really sexy, and so does Carly, and we've been watching it. And during the intro to that show, it's like kind of interesting music, and it's him just getting ready. He shaves and he bleeds a little into the sink, and the whole thing plays around with blood. He makes juice
I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah, he makes juice with like a blood orange. He smacks a mosquito off of his arm. It's all playing around blood. But he eats breakfast during it, and then at one point he pulls his shirt, like a white t-shirt, over his head, and you can see his face through the t-shirt, and it kind of catches his lip. And it like kind of pulls it down a little bit. For those of you listening, I am trying to pull my
he's
lip.
Doing all of these things in front of me, and it's great looking.
It's turning him on.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell. But then that's the point, is that it turns us on.
Oh.
Where Michael C. Hall's an attractive man, especially at the time of shooting this show.
Yeah. He's
an attractive man. But at one point, you watch a show like this about something that is so fundamentally ridiculous. It is a blood expert forensic Miami Metro PD cop serial killer who's like adopted by a cop who's like, oh, I can tell that this is a child psychopath because I'm a cop. I'm a grizzled cop on the case, so I can tell that this child is a psychopath. So I'm going to teach him the right way to be a serial killer. It's just like, it's an obscene, strange premise for a show. But you watch something that's ridiculous like this, and you enter hypothetical premises of your own. Like, well, what would you do? Because people are getting close to finding out he's a serial killer.
Right.
And it's like, I'll give you an example. Spoiler for a very minor subplot of the first season of Dexter, which is very old. And this has nothing to do with the actual story of the show. So spoiler, just jump ahead until you hear our theme song. His love interest, ex-husband, who is abusive to her, is like making a big stink for their lives and whatnot. So Dexter knocks him unconscious, drags him to his apartment, and injects heroin into his arm so that he would break parole and go back to jail. That's the idea. And it works. It works. And he gets murdered in jail, this guy.
Oh, wow.
So he's out of the picture in every way because he got murdered in prison. But that's the hypothetical. It's like, well, like if I had a shitty ex and you beamed him in the head with a cast iron pan and did heroin into his arm. Well, I guess you made him do heroin into his arm.
Right.
But Freudian slip, the heroin slip. But if you did all that, would you be mad at me? And you engage in those conversations. And I realized something. I don't think there's much that she could do that would ever bother me. Because I'm genuinely considering like, well, what if and I don't really have that kind of horror in my life. I've never experienced anything like that. But it's more like if I found out that she was a serial killer and she was like, but I promise it's only bad guys.
Yeah, it's for the right reasons.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay. Like as long as it's not a weird like sex creep thing. And even that, it's like, well, we need to get you some help. But like I'll visit you. You know what I mean? Right.
I think the most surprising thing about this whole story is that it's taken this long for like Carly to get into that show.
No, because she's seen it all.
Oh, okay.
She just she keeps.
It seems like her sort of thing because she loves Jigsaw and those Saw movies.
Yeah, that's because she's a psycho murderer who only murders the guilty. tomorrow, and welcome ye to Ye Oldie Third Channel Podcast.
Where are we right now?
We're in the mid-ages, and also the Third Channel Podcast.
The Middle Ages, where we delve into the horror franchises you love from the perspectives of a lifelong horror fan?
And a newbie to the Middle Ages and this genre. I'm Ye Old PJ.
And I'm Derek.
And today, the only thing we're here to talk about is horror. I was going to say ye oldie horror to continue the bit, but I like this is what is said.
This is what we're talking
routine. About. I'm obsessed with routines because of...
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, I wake up every day and I just start screaming. No, welcome everybody to what is the craziest thing that we may talk about ever on this show. Maybe. Because it's not one housekeeping thing. We know that this is barely a horror movie. It probably isn't at all. We're aware. We are aware that it is difficult to call yourself a horror movie when you have like Jason and the Argonaut stop motion skeletons doing Three Stooges bits on a catapult. We are aware.
See, but that's the thing. There's a bunch of spooky skeletons in this.
Yes, there are spooky skeletons, but there is also a bunch of wizards making bullets and stuff using high school textbooks.
Yeah.
That were absconded with by essentially a Walmart employee. Mm-hmm. So
shop smart, shop as smart.
We are aware. Please, if you want to leave comments and stuff, you know, I was going to say, please don't comment that this isn't a real horror movie, but now you're all going to do that. If you're going to leave a comment, that's what it's going to be. So reverse psychology, please leave us a comment telling us that Army of Darkness isn't a horror movie. And hopefully that doesn't convince you to do it.
It's the worst reverse psychology I've ever heard.
It's reverse psychology was the attempt, but let's just plow through it. Let's just move on right ahead.
Okay. I think the first thing I just want to say about this movie, before we get into any of the facts, figures, nuts and bolts, any of that, is that we've mentioned it on another episode before, but the original working title of this movie was The Medieval Dead. And that was, I think, a pretty genius title.
If they had called this Medieval Dead, that would be the best title of anything.
Right.
It would be because The Evil Dead is, and jury's still out, it might be The Evil Dead, but either way, that's a brilliant title. Mm-hmm. Evil Dead 2 sucks. I hate titles with numbers in it. That sucks. Except Scream, because I think Scream is kind of clever for having done that for as long as they have.
It's kind of got a point.
But then Medieval Dead ties it to the series a bit better than Army of Darkness does. I think it would have been more clear, because that's a big complaint that I hear about people who love this series, that saw this theory, like the series in theaters and whatnot, is that they didn't know.
Right. No, a lot of people come to this franchise having seen Army of Darkness, not realizing that it's the third in a trilogy,
because they do the thing that a lot of movies do from that period, where it's like, well, how long has it been since they've seen the last one? We should probably recap a little bit. Because they do that, it kind of is self-contained.
Yeah.
It has its own intro that describes the plot necessity for its story. Mm-hmm. And then it ends in roughly the same way. So it is kind of on its own.
Yeah. And I mean, just the way that the name kind of came to be is the working title was Medieval Dead. It was one that, because if you remember from last week, Sam Raimi actually had the idea of sending Ash back in time to medieval times and dealing with Deadites back then with Evil Dead 2.
Right.
But they didn't want that.
And thank God they didn't, because Evil Dead 2 is fantastic.
Right. So then he gets to fully achieve that goal with Army of Darkness. But basically it was going to be called Evil Dead 3 : Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness was something that Irvin Shapiro, who's a name we've brought up several times, he actually came up for with Evil Dead 2, calling that one Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead versus Army of Darkness or something. So they took that, they carried it over, and then eventually just kept getting boiled down to just being called Army of Darkness, because Universal, who is the company who finalized, produced, and distributed this film, they didn't want to draw attention to the fact that it was the third in a trilogy where they didn't own the first two.
Fair enough.
So they were like, well, let's just give it a title that we can kind of hopefully get those people in to see it who don't, it doesn't have the baggage of two other movies.
What I will say is that I wish that it had been one or the other, because I'm fine with The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and Evil Dead 3, Army of Darkness.
Right.
Or I am fine with The Evil Dead, Dead by Dawn, and Army of Darkness. And those being 1, 2, 3 of a trilogy.
Right.
I'm fine with either of those, but the fact that we have the worst version of both is like, I think that's maybe my only real complaint with these and the makeup from the first movie. But like,
do we want to start with the summary here?
Sure. Yes.
Just to kind of put people, on to what this movie could possibly be about.
This summary says when Ash Williams is accidentally transported to 1300 AD, he must retrieve the Necronomicon and battle an army of the dead in order to return home. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Again, it's because these plots are so simple that you can boil them down into just that.
Well, there's next to the only thing that would make it more true to the story is if in the middle it's like he returns to the year 1300 AD, does a bunch of fucking Looney Tunes stuff, is absolutely silly from start to finish, and then he has to battle like that. Yeah. That would be perfect if they added that in the middle.
Yeah, I agree, because that is where we get in this movie.
There is literally a Looney Tunes bit in this movie. It's not like it. It is exactly that. It's with those 3 books and what happens to his face. That is a Looney Tunes bit.
Yeah. We're going to go over all of that because I can't wait. I love that sequence of the film.
Yeah.
Army of Darkness released originally October 9th of 1992 at the Sitges, 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 a film festival that covers, I think it's in Spain, and it covers like fantasy and sci-fi movies mostly. Okay. But then it got its US release in February of 1993. So this was released in my lifetime. And I was not there on day one because I would have been 2 years old. It's directed by Sam Raimi, so he's returning. It's written by Sam Raimi and his brother Ivan Raimi, who I believe had both, they had worked together writing his previous film to this, Darkman, produced by Robert Tappert, returning again. And then I always think for these films, it's especially important to bring up the cinematographers, because the cinematography in this film is done by none other than Bill Pope, which, unless you're a film nerd like I am, it probably won't mean anything to you. But Bill Pope is the person who, he had worked with Sam before this on Darkman, but he went on to be the DP on the Matrix trilogy.
Okay.
And he also worked on Spider-Man 2 and 3. He was cinematographer for Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Later, he's worked on other Marvel movies for the MCU, Shang-Chi and Ant-Man 3. And he, I believe, is going to work on the new live-action How to Train Your Dragon film.
I didn't know they were even making a live action.
Oh, yeah, there's a trailer out for it.
My brain ended the consideration of live action adaptations with, and I am Steve with Jack Black. At that point, my brain has opened its septic tank and flushed all of that away.
He longed for the mines. I can't wait for that, the insanity that is that movie. The budget for this one,
I'm
again,
gonna guess on this
much larger.
I'm going to guess because last time it jumped from $375,000, which was the estimated post budget of Evil Dead 1. Because I remember that because I made that stellar, it should have been $375 joke. So I'll always remember that. Second one you said was like a couple $1 million. Yeah,
3.5.
Yeah. So then this one, I'm going to say $24 million.
$11 million.
Okay.
You overshot it.
Is it 11 plus anything? Maybe 13?
No, it's $11 million is what I have. That's the figure I have.
I like this game when I guess because I am always wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not about me getting it right because that's never going to happen. It's about by how wrong have I gotten it. This time, quite a bit.
Yeah. Wait, what was that number you gave?
$24 million.
It made $21.5 million. So just a little shy of that.
Okay, so that's what I was guessing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You were still wrong.
Oh, God. I quit.
The initial budget for this was $8 million, and that was during like pre-production, and then it became very obvious that they were going to need a lot more money. And thanks to the financial success of Darkman, which is the film that Sam Raimi did between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. It's a movie I've never seen.
I have also, it's Liam Neeson, right?
Yeah.
I have also not seen Darkman.
I would like to. I have the Shout Factory Blu-ray, so we should watch that.
I found Darkman in a strange place, which was I was looking at Halloween masks on Trick or Treat Studios' website, and they have a Darkman mask, and I was like, "The fuck is that?"
Interesting. He kind of looks like because his face is like wrapped in bandages.
Yeah,
so he almost looks like Hush from Batman.
It's like the shadow or the spirit, the spirit mixed with like the Invisible Man.
Yeah, that's a good pull.
But in reality, it's Qui-Gon Jinn. He's under there.
Bruce Campbell, he's in that movie as well. This is another one that Dino De Laurentiis also had a hand in because he had a multi-picture deal with Universal Pictures, and so that's how Army of Darkness moved over to actually be made by a big budget studio of Universal. Universal then decided they contributed half of the film's budget, and basically it just had just a much larger scope, needed more extensive effects work, and it ended up that Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, and producer Robert Tappert actually had to put up over $1 million of their own collective salaries to shoot a new ending, because Universal wasn't happy with exactly what they gave them at the end of it all.
Okay.
The makeup and creature effects here were handled by two different companies. Tony Gardner and his company of Alterian Incorporated, they were responsible specifically for Ash and Sheila. So anything to do with their makeup effects in the movie.
Does that include Evil Ash?
I believe so.
Okay.
And then while Kurtzman, Nicotero, and Berger, EFX Group, so K and B, who we mentioned in the last one with Evil Dead 2, they were credited with the remaining special effects for all the rest of the characters. And then Tom Sullivan, who has worked on all these films in the Evil Dead franchise up until this point, he also contributed to the visual effects. He did, stop motion and stuff like that for some of the creatures. And so Dino De Laurentiis, because he was, pleased with the success of Evil Dead 2 and Darkman, he basically gave Raimi and his crew freedom to shoot the film however they wanted. And then Universal took over in post-production. They were not happy with Raimi's cut, specifically the ending, because there are like 3 or 4 different cuts of this film that are readily available out there on Blu-rays and DVDs and what have you.
I read today that the apparently original ending for this movie was that instead of drinking the 6 drops of the potion, he drinks 7 and wakes up in the post-apocalypse.
Correct.
Which is both because they were like, apparently they scrapped it because they were like, well, no, that's just fucking a feel bad ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think test audiences didn't like it very much, and Universal definitely didn't like it because, they call it like the bad ending, meaning like it's a downer.
It's just so funny, though.
It is so funny.
Like the actual ending of this film is quite good. It's very funny, but that just feels so much more faithful to the Evil Dead mentality of fuck Ash Williams.
Right. He can never get it right. He's always just slightly off.
Right.
That is the ending that you see in the director's cut of the film. So you can actually see that. I think that version runs like 93 minutes or something, but the other version runs about 81 minutes. So that had to be shot. That's where I think the extra money came in from Raimi and Campbell and Tappert. Believe it or not, Raimi ran still with how like not bloody and gory and scary and anything like that. Raimi still ran into trouble with the MPAA and got an NC-17 because the NC-17 rating had taken over from the X rating at this point. But they got an NC-17 for this film initially.
Has to just be an assumption.
Yeah.
Because like I can't imagine they cut enough out to change it based on what the movie currently is.
Apparently, it was because of a shot of a female Deadite being killed early on in the film, and they made cuts. It still kept getting, couldn't bring that rating down. And Universal was actually wanting it to be a PG-13 rating because they wanted to, again, steer people away from it having to, think of it as a threequel, and then also get more people in seats. So PG-13. And it's like, well, that was never going to happen either. Because even with the cuts that they made, it still came back with an R rating. But at least that allowed them to release it.
It's just so funny, though, because like a good example is Split. You watch Split, and at the end of Split, you're like, oh, shit, is this Unbreakable? Is this an Unbreakable movie? Mm-hmm. And then you watch Unbreakable or whatever, and it's like, oh, and then they announced that they're making Glass. And It's like, oh, okay. It's like a secret part of that movie. This is the opposite, where they don't mention it, but then you walk up in the early 90s and see a poster. You're like, okay, well, that's Ash. That's obviously him. He's got the fucking, like, this is the blue torn shirt. He's wearing exactly what he was at the end of the last one.
Yeah.
Like, that's got to be him. It's so funny. Just the idea of, well, we don't have to say that it's related. It's like, well, no, you don't have to. But if you make a new Star Wars movie, don't call it Star Wars, but have a bunch of people with fucking lightsabers. And one of them, by the way, is obviously Obi-Wan. It's like, well, hold on. Is that a Star Wars movie?
Yeah, this is honestly, like, this is where the quintessential Ash Williams as a character comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. It is his insanity. I think, like, him being like a goofball Looney Tune, I think is more born from 2. Mm-hmm. But every fundamental quote, except for Groovy, everything else is in this movie.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick. It's a 12-gauge double-barreled Remington. S-Mart's top of the line. You can find this in the sporting goods department. That's right, this sweet baby was made in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Retails for about $109.95. It's got a walnut stock, cobalt blue steel, and a hair trigger. That's right, shop smart. Shop S-Mart. You got that?
That's where we get Boomstick, which they use that in everything for the next 20 years. Boomstick is a...
Yeah, I believe there was a PS2 game that was called, like, The Evil Dead. Give Me Back My Boomstick or something like that.
That's hilarious. But, like, it's also, like, there are things in, like, there are achievements in old Call of Duty games and stuff that's, like, Boomstick. Or, like, it's just a colloquialism. Mm-hmm. It is something born from that show that has become part of the way we talk. And it's so funny because it's just from this really weird movie about a guy, a time traveler, who falls with his Oldsmobile into the Middle Ages.
Well, yeah, you got to get that in there somehow.
The Oldsmobile, you could have just driven it there.
Yeah, no, not. I mean, what would it run on?
Trash. It would run on trash or lightning.
We do see it run again toward the end of the film is the funny thing.
Which is also funny because that scene, to me, mirrored so heavily, and I actually don't know which one came out first, but it mirrored so heavily the Doc and Marty retrofitting the DeLorean to work in the third Back to the Future movie. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. This movie starts, and it's almost become like a cliche. He doesn't say this exactly, but it does this thing where, like, the camera tilts up, and we actually tilt up to Ash's stump first. Mm-hmm. He's in like stocks, but they're not. They're stocks around his head and his wrists, and then he's in like a chain gang with a bunch of people walking through the desert. And then we pan over to his face and we reveal who he is, and he's doing voiceover. Mm-hmm. But it's almost become that cliche of, like, well, you might be wondering how I got here.
Right.
Well, let me tell you. Because he does that. We flash back to him working and, like, cleaned up at S-Mart.
And what's funny is because he's like the most cleanly shaven and like his hair is very well done and he looks the most cleaned up. He actually in Army of Darkness to me looks younger than he does in The Evil Dead.
Oh yeah.
Because in The Evil Dead, he's got like the 5 o'clock shadow real bad. It's also the film like is super grainy, but then he's got that fucking eyebrow. And by this one, I think the 90s has called and said, hey, 2 is better than 1. And so he separated them. They got a divorce, his eyebrows.
So we get our introduction here of S-Mart, which is another staple of this franchise outside of these movies more than anything, the comics and things. I'll also say that this is I believe the first and last big studio film that Bruce Campbell starred as the lead. He was paid $500,000 on this, which is larger than the entire budget of the first film.
Yeah. I will say that I think that Hollywood owes the world an apology for that fact.
Yes.
I think that Bruce Campbell is insanely talented. I think he's incredibly funny. And I think that he doesn't belong anywhere except for the role of leading man.
Yeah.
He is excellent. I mean, he did so goddamn good as the Pizza Papa. Are you kidding me? He was the best part of that movie. And I also love that Sam Raimi was like, well, I'm going to put him in this. And I'm going to make him beat the fuck out of himself.
Yeah, he just does the Evil Dead 2 evil hand punching him in the face bit again.
Or like the plate smashing.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I love that is just a continued motif through this friendship.
Yeah.
Here we get a brief revised recap of the events of the first 2 films. And again, some of it actually is the footage from Evil Dead 2.
Right.
Because it's because it's a Dino De Laurentiis picture, he could use that footage. But then there is part of it that's reshot.
Yeah.
Like Ash explains like, I was, in the woods, read from the book, evil got into my hand and I had to lop it off at the wrist. And you see him cut his hand off with a chainsaw again. But it's not the exact same shot. And apparently in the commentary they talked about it and they were like, yeah, it didn't play with the same cadence that the rest of that recap. We wanted it to be real quick. And so that took too long, the original way that they shot it. So they had to shoot it again.
Couldn't they literally just have used the second where he cuts his hand off?
I
had to reshoot the entire thing.
I don't know.
It's Sam Raimi wanted to splash blood on his face one more time.
I think it was because this one, he doesn't do that.
No,
he doesn't really get covered in blood in this movie. We have our third Linda.
Yes.
This time played by Bridget Fonda, who is like a big name actress.
Yeah.
And she was supposed to do more in this movie and they just, I guess, cut all that out or didn't end up shooting it.
It's funny because what a lot of movies will do is they'll use the same, from whatever the origin story is, they'll use that for whatever your then romantic lead ends up being. And it's like, oh, it's, however long apart their ancestors or whatever. But they just didn't do that.
No, not at all.
No.
Well, and initially, the original draft of this, like the script, didn't actually have them get to medieval times until like the second half of the movie. So the first half was just a big budget recap of the first 2 movies again. But I'm so happy that they just kind of quickly were like, this is where this guy came from. This is why we're here in the Middle Ages.
The one thing they didn't spend enough time on is why he has the Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange gray sideburns, like the gray sides of the hair.
Yeah.
Because in the second one, he's like, don't look at it after he's stop motion grade. But in this one, they don't mention it.
Yeah, not at all.
No, not at all.
They get, you do see him, sucked into the portal, and then they reuse the footage of him in the car falling.
Yes.
They apparently reshot that, and they didn't end up using the footage because the first time that they used it, they had a crane. They shot that at like a rock quarry, and they had a crane to drop the car. And the first time that they went to shoot this sequence, something went wrong mechanically, and the crane fell off and into the rock quarry. And the driver like jumped out at the last second. So there was no injuries, but then they had to get another crane to come in and get that first crane out of the rock quarry.
Hearing that, it's like, oh shit, Sam Raimi almost got John Landis.
Oh God.
Yeah. Look, Google it.
Yeah. We're not gonna talk about
Google John Landis Twilight Zone movie.
And then we get the title reveal of Bruce Campbell versus Army of Darkness is like the opening title sequence of this. And there are certain DVDs out there where that is what the movie is called. But I don't know. That's just
You said Bruce Campbell.
No, that's what I'm saying. When you watch the movie, at the beginning of the movie, after the recap, and these like ghostly letters come up, it says Bruce Campbell, and then that goes away, versus Army of Darkness.
You have to leave this in.
Yeah.
We can't cut this out.
It's a bizarre
My
thing.
genuine reaction to this. I'm going to Google this. Well, while you continue, and I'll continue to go through this, but I have to Google this and see this because that's fucking amazing.
We kind of get a repeat, revised version of the end of Evil Dead 2, which, the wizard comes up and says, he is the one prophesied to come from the skies to deliver us from the terrors of the Deadites. And then we've pretty much caught back up.
Oh my God, you're fucking right.
Isn't it bizarre?
That is so strange. That is so fucking weird.
They were basically like, this is what the people want.
It's like Michael J. Fox goes back to the future. That's so weird. But it's Michael J. Fox goes back to the future 3 specifically.
Yeah, they put the number on there.
Yeah. Well, they have to.
Yeah, we would want to confuse, all the people out there.
We would want to confuse Bob Zemeckis.
Right. So where are we? He is been captured by these knights, who are being led by King Arthur. I guess his name is Arthur.
Yeah. Well, Lord Arthur, as I think how he's credited.
Okay.
Which is, I don't know who owns the rights at that point to King Arthur.
I mean, I would think that's gotta be
in the public domain.
Right.
Way more than 90 years old.
Yeah.
Fucking Monty Python could do it. Like,
and he is at war with Henry the Red.
Henry the Red, who was an actor that I thought I recognized, and it was not the same guy. I thought it was the guy who played Little John in Mel Brooks's Men in Tights, but it is not that guy. Just, I thought he looked similar.
Yeah, these two actors, they haven't been in a whole lot, honestly. Arthur is played by Marcus Gilbert, and he was in, I was trying to look it up. He was in like a movie in 1984 called The Masks of Death. I believe it's a Sherlock Holmes film.
Okay.
He was in Rambo 3.
Oh.
And he was in a 4-episode arc of Doctor Who in 1989 called Battlefield.
Okay.
And then Duke Henry the Red, he was played by Richard Grove, and he was in a sci-fi horror film called Not of This World from 1991. He's in Point Break.
Okay.
And then he was later in Scanner Cop, which is like a
3-arc episode of Doctor Who?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's a movie that came out after Scanners.
Okay.
And they were playing off of that term of psychic cops, I guess. But
why wouldn't you just call that Psychops?
That probably was already taken.
Oh my God. We need to find out if that's taken, because if not, you and I have a pitch.
We have to start writing
for next year's Canis Film Festival.
You're right.
Again, a Third Channel bit. This bit brought to you by the Third Channel Podcast. Please continue.
He is led in this. They're all chained together, all these prisoners of Duke Henry's men, and they're brought to the castle, which is. I think it's a forced perspective miniature of a castle, but then they actually built a castle set because they're in it for most of the movie.
Right.
So
I think it's easy to build the inside of it, but not having to build a stone facade of a castle would be, or even something that looks like that would be a nightmare. But I do like the forced perspective. It's very this movie.
Yeah.
It's you see that image and it evokes the rest of this movie.
It's the correct the correct level of both low budget and big budget that this movie is doing.
It's big budget because it looks impressive enough, but it's low budget because no structure on earth looks like that.
Right.
The angles are weird. It doesn't look real. It looks bizarre.
They're as they're riding into the castle, they are met by Sheila, who will end up being our romantic lead to Ash. She's our female lead of the film.
She is also the Super Saiyan 3 Deadite. was a note that I took about her appearance because she loses her eyebrows but gets a big brow ridge.
Yeah.
It's a really strange look.
That's a good way of putting it.
But I like it because it doesn't look human. It looks like a possession. It's very Reagan from The Exorcist. It's that kind of like ugly sort of, look, but it's not ugly like it's poorly done. It's ugly like it just, you mix one, you take one detail off the human face and it's not human anymore.
It becomes uncanny.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit.
Sheila is played by Embeth Davidtz.
Okay.
And she was in this film, and then the same year that this was released, because this got held back by probably about a year, but she was also in Schindler's List, the Steven Spielberg film.
I'm not, that's such an odd thing to laugh at. People say that one of the things that elicits laughter is the unexpected.
Right.
And I don't know why. Hearing
that she went from Army of Darkness to Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. Yeah, it is a bizarre turn there. In 1996, she played Miss Honey in Matilda.
Okay.
Which is where I know her from. Later, she was in 13 Ghosts in 2001, the remake of the old Hammer film. Or the old Castle film of 13 Ghosts. She is in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the David Fincher version.
Okay.
And then she also is in The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, the Andrew Garfield ones.
As
she plays Peter's mom in like the flashback sequences.
Seriously?
Yeah. And then most recently of like these sorts of, like genre pictures, she was in M. Night Shyamalan's Old in 2021, which is about the beach that makes you old. She meets Arthur on the horse and she's asking about her brother. He explains that her brother has been killed in battle. He, died a hero.
Her brother, also played by Ted Raimi. That's now this one's a joke, but if it weren't a joke, that's one of 5 characters.
Right.
Right.
They are led to a giant pit in the middle of the square there at the castle. It's a giant metal pit.
Yeah, it's a giant 300 pit.
Right.
And it's just as why do you have that?
And it has a metal top like with big slidey doors on it.
And like a spiky well around it. And there's no reason to have that.
Nope. But that's how they punish people. They throw them in the pit.
Yeah, it's their Rancor pit.
Yeah, pretty much.
But instead of a Rancor, they have an old lady Deadite down there.
Yeah. Like a witch.
Yeah.
Before they throw anybody else in, they basically want to show off what is possible from this pit.
Right.
And so they push some poor fool in there. Mm-hmm. And I love it because everybody is like super excited about people getting pushed in this pit.
Yes.
They are beside themselves.
Yeah.
And they push this guy in. He screams. He falls in. There's a splash. And then there's silence. Mm-hmm. And everybody kind of leans in. And then there is just screams and a giant, like, Old Faithful geyser of blood.
I was literally going to say exactly the words geyser of blood and thought to myself, I'm going to wait and see if he says it. And you do. Because it is. That's all you can use. It's like the earth popped a pimple and out came all of that guy's blood.
Yes. And that's kind of the only big gush of blood that you get in this movie, but they had to get it out of the way very soon.
Yeah, well, because they just used 6 bottles of red food coloring into a water cannon and just blasted it into the sky. It is insane. Another thing that I have an issue with this sequence as well, and watching them back to back to back, mm-hmm. It is, and especially because we've been making this show, so I'm trying to comment on the rules, the power that the Deadites have, the things that they can do.
Yeah. In
the last movie, the daughter of the professor's, we assume boyfriend, mm-hmm. Ed, I believe, mm-hmm. flies
right
around. So how do you put a Deadite in a well and trap it there? Why wouldn't it just fly out?
I don't know. These are earlier ones.
Again, if that's what you're thinking of, the movies have done a poor job. I'm only thinking of it because it's my job. I am PJ of the Third Channel Podcast, investigative journalist.
Wow.
Yeah, we're journalists now, by the way.
I'm so proud of us. You mentioning watching these movies back to back to back reminds me Something that I've wanted to plug and wanted to talk about briefly in all three of these, and I guess this is as good a time as any, is that in the commentary, Bruce Campbell jokes because they do the retelling of the events of 1 and 2, just like they did at the beginning of Evil Dead 2.
Right.
But like they all kind of like one movie leads into the next movie, leads into the next movie. And so Bruce Campbell jokes of like, wouldn't it be funny if like, I wonder if anybody ever tried to cut out the credits and splice all these movies together into one long movie. Well, recently, I have actually gotten my hands on a copy of a fan edit done for this trilogy, the Evil Dead trilogy, and I watched it on Christmas. That is how I spent my Christmas of 2024.
That's great.
And they're edited together by a gentleman named John Keogh.
Okay.
I've been kind of chatting with him online some. You can follow him on Instagram. His Instagram handle is edits by JSK. He is a impressive video editor from what I've seen. He's done music videos. He's done supercuts. He has a cut online. He puts it on his Vimeo every once in a while. And it's all of the nightmare sequences, all of the dream sequences from A Nightmare on Elm Street, all cut together. And so like certain things fade into, because I thought it was just going to be like, oh yeah, you watch them in order,
right?
Just nightmare after nightmare after. And it's like, no, for like, I think it's like 30 minutes once you cut it all together. It's incredible.
They're like interwoven though?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds really neat.
And so what he's done here is with the Evil Dead trilogy is he's done just that. He's taken the opening and closing credits for all the films, lopped those off. He's taken out the recaps from, the previous movies on the new movie, on the second movies, whatever. And he's just cut it all together into a seamless, it's like a 4-hour picture.
Now, going from 2 to 3 is obviously the easy one. He goes through the portal and you basically start Evil Dead 3. The question that I have is how do you go from 1 to 2?
So you play out the entire events of 1. And the last shot of 1 is the shaky cam of the evil force, picking up from the leaves way behind the cabin, and it zooms past like the work shed, bursts through the back door.
And you pick up with the camera stuck to his face on the rig?
Yes.
Okay.
So you slam through that front door of the cabin, and as it does, it transitions into the same thing being done in Evil Dead 2.
That's fantastic.
And it actually goes from 4x3 square to a 16x9 or I'm not good at aspect ratios. I don't know if it's like a 133:1.
It goes from old square to widescreen.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Yeah. And it's because that was where I was like, ooh, where is that transition going to happen? And it's the doors burst open and all of a sudden we're in widescreen. And then we're right onto Ash's screaming face and we're right into Evil Dead 2. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
If you have, follow John on Instagram. He's always working on new stuff from what I've seen. He actually get in contact with him. He sells these flash drives of these things and different cuts that he makes, different edits that he makes for things. And I'm always looking for whatever his next project is.
Yeah, I was very interested because we kind of had that intermediary period where my clan came back here in between one celebration and the other for Christmas. Because I've got my mom has a family, my dad has a big family, so we kind of bounce back and forth on Christmas Day. And you were watching that cut, and it's very impressive. You don't lose any image quality. You don't lose.
Oh yeah, he like really stresses how the highest quality that he can get seems to be the way that he goes.
Yeah, and it works. It's very, very nice. You said that he has one that's upcoming that my brother was super interested in about Henson's stuff. Henson's
he whenever he's not doing these edits of films, because he's also done, and I haven't gotten a chance to watch this one yet, but in the future when we get to these films, I will watch it and we will discuss it some. But he has a kind of like with the nightmare sequences, he has an interwoven cut of X Pearl, and Maxine, that trilogy. And so when he's not working on things like that, he also is like a, like, I don't know, like film collector, and he like restores things and he puts them into collections that he then, puts out there for people. So yeah, he has a Henson collection coming out that is I believe it's the 4K versions of Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal. And there was a Netflix series that was like a legacy sequel of The Dark Crystal. Mm-hmm. It's all of that cleaned up as best that it possibly can, all in one big collection. And it has a couple other like fantasy Henson shows from that era, things that I haven't even heard of.
That's amazing. Really quickly, you mentioned that, when we get to talking about these movies, we'll watch that, X Pearl and Maxine. Derek, you may not realize this, but all of this has just been the cold open to talk about X. Anyway, back to Army of Darkness.
So they've been led in. We've watched the geyser of blood go off, and Ash is, pleading for his life.
Yeah.
He's kind of, that's the thing I love about Ash as a character is like, he is our hero, mm-hmm. but he, for so long, does not do heroic things.
No, not at all.
And he's like trying to get on the good side of Henry the Red. But then whenever that doesn't seem to be working, then he turns to Arthur and is like, well, I don't know this guy at all. I've never met him. Like, he's playing both sides so that he always comes out on top.
He always comes out on top.
But it doesn't work. Ash gets pushed down into the pit, which is, of course, what we want to see anyway. And like you said, it's a pit with spiked walls. It's a flooded floor. There's water all over the place there. And he ends up fighting a witch, I guess.
An elderly lady deadite is my assumption. And it is hilarious.
But it's like it's an elder, like the makeup is, but she's doing like flips.
Yeah, it's very Yoda. Yeah, it's very strange.
She was played by a gymnast that allowed her to do all of the acrobatics in that costume.
Oh my God.
And the best part of the whole sequence, because it's kind of like a wrestling match. Mm-hmm. Like at one point, like she's got him held down, and then his legs come up into frame and grab either side of her head and then flip her away from him.
Yeah.
But it
was really him training for Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The wizard comes to the edge of the pit, and he calls down, I don't know what he calls him. I can't remember. But he reveals that he's carrying the chainsaw. He picked it up because I guess it broke off and it fell off whenever, Ash crash landed before. Mm. And so he calls down to him, and then he tosses the chainsaw down to Ash. It's like the greatest moment. It's this heroic moment where
it's the hero moment, but it's like, the hero moment is like where Batman like opens the utility belt. Right. But it's just a fucking chainsaw with a bunch of pieces on it that lets him shove his arm stump into it. It's fantastic.
It's and he jumps up and just perfectly attaches back to his hand. And he uses
the hero score swells.
Everybody cheers.
There's not knowing what it is.
Right. I have no idea. There's this blacksmith at the castle, and he's got this giant like walrus mustache. Mm-hmm. And he looked very disapproving of Ash before, and this gets like a big cheer out of him. He decapitates the witch, and then he's going to start climbing out, and that's when the second like bog creature comes out of the walls.
Yeah,
and this one is more akin to
like Ed, like those really good latex sort of masks.
Yeah. Like a little, it's a worse version of, it's a more waterlogged version of like Henrietta from Evil Dead 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's waterlogged, by the way, not sweat logged. We did, by the way. We did. I had mentioned in last week's episode that when we were done, we were going to go watch immediately the scene where you talk about sweat, like a shot glass worth of sweat dripping out of what was Ted Raimi's costumed ear. And we did watch that immediately after the episode, and it was horrific.
Yeah. And then we had to go shower.
Bug called me today. Bug is, for those of you listening, Bug's a friend of ours, a very close friend of ours.
This might be the first mention of Bug on this show.
And he will guest with us at some point, hopefully sooner than later. But he called me to talk to me about the show. And as we were talking about it, we were talking about Evil Dead specifically. And I mentioned that to him. And he was like, I've never noticed that. I was like, dude, you got to watch it right now. So if this episode has come out, and Bug, you still have, if you listen to this and you still have not seen it, stop, go watch that, come back, leave a comment.
Yeah.
Or send us a text. You can find the link in our description below.
And apparently the actor who played the pit creature number 2, or as Sam and Bruce and them all called it on set, the, quote, pit bitch.
Why? Just call it the pitch.
Yeah, you love shortening words like that.
That's what wordplay is my favorite. Yeah.
That was played by an actor named Billy Bryan, I believe, who apparently was also the man who was in the Stave Puff Marshmallow Man costume in Ghostbusters.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a weird fact if you'd like, to take that away.
That's bizarre.
Ash gets out of the pit. He defeats he cuts off the pit bitch's hand.
Yes.
He rides the chain up to the top. The walls are closing in, like the spiked walls are closing in.
Yep.
And he just barely makes it out of there, and we assume that
the pitch bitch
is skewered,
has been obliterated. Yes.
One of my favorite, and I remember laughing about this, like seeing this as like a kid, is he gets up and Arthur is unhappy that he is, he's been bested. And so he calls out, "Sword boy." And this like kid comes over carrying his sword, and he drops down on one knee, and Arthur like puts his leg up on the guy and pulls the sword from the sheath, and the guy like falls over.
Yeah, it's like the momentum of him pulling the sword has also pushed the boy.
I don't know. I find it hilarious, and just the idea of shouting for sword boy. But that's where we get the clip that we play.
Yeah. Which is the best monologue of the entire series. I love every part about it, especially that he's referring to things that make no sense to these people. Remington, Michigan. He's like, it's $199.99. You can find it in the sporting goods aisle. None of this means anything to them. They just know that if he points it at a thing, that thing explodes. The other thing I love about it is he says that you can find it in the sporting goods aisle. You can kind of still do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that's sad. It makes me feel worried about the future.
It is a quote that's used in a bunch of different things. Or you see it referenced in a lot of things. But yeah, the boomstick. I love his description. I was reading today, and I don't know enough about guns. But apparently, like, it's not that brand of gun. The one that he's describing is not what he's holding in his hand.
That makes sense.
They don't use Remingtons apparently in any of the Evil Dead movies.
Well, I mean, the thing is you have dialogue. You have Sam Raimi and his team writing the dialogue for the movie. I'm sure they write that monologue for him, probably along with Bruce. They write the dialogue, and then the props department is like, "This is the gun we have." Yeah, and he's not going to change it. He doesn't fucking care.
I know that Bruce like kind of ad-libbed portions of it because that's why he wanted to stress that it was from wherever Michigan, because that's where Bruce Campbell apparently bought the shotgun that's in the Evil Dead, and that is where he bought it. Like that's the city that he bought it in. Because he's from Michigan. Okay. So I think he just wanted that reference in there.
To go back to our discussion on The Evil Dead, it was premiered at the Redford Theater, which is in Detroit. Which, I mean, those polls, Detroit, Chicago, those things are, it's not a New York, it's not an LA, especially at the point where these things are coming out. It's like, no, if you're doing a premiere at the Redford Theater in Detroit, it's because that's an important place to you. Yeah. So that tracks.
And then shortly after that clip, he spins around, and to punctuate his statement,
he shoots the bog bitch, the pit bitch. He shoots that, and it explodes.
Right, and it like does this like giant somersault in the air and falls back into the pit. And so now he is lauded as a hero.
I also love that he keeps calling them like Neanderthals and gorillas. And he's like, if any of you gorillas even fucking touch me again. And it's before he's pleading, but now he's got a gun.
Yeah.
And we've all had this conversation, right? You daydreamed about this. Everyone who's ever listened to us, is listening to us now, or will listen to us in the future, has had the daydream about like, oh, well, if I go back in time, I just go back with a gun. Yeah, I go back to the mid ages with a gun. And the king of England would be like, somebody sees him, and then you'd shoot one person, and everyone would be like, my God, he's a wizard, but a real one.
And I don't know if they ever call him a wizard in this. They call him the wise man.
And the bearded guy, Calvin was with us when we were rewatching this for the first time, and he just refused to stop calling him Ian McKellen, which is a good joke. That's a good joke. Not calling him Gandalf, but calling him Sir Ian McKellen is a good joke. But yeah, no, I think he is credited as the wise man. And then it's just so funny because immediately he's gotten his chainsaw back. He's gotten his boomstick back. And now he is firing on full Ash cylinders.
Yes.
He is more him than he has been the entire movie so far.
And then he's immediately like, how do you get me home?
Yeah, I want to get the fuck out of here.
Which is where, like, the wise man then, starts explaining, the Book of the Dead is the only thing that can. I want to, before we go away from him for a second, he is played by an actor named Ian Abercrombie.
Okay.
He was in Young Frankenstein. He was in The Lost World, Jurassic Park, Mouse Hunt.
Mouse Hunt.
I love that movie.
I love that movie so much.
He was apparently in Wild Wild West. And then he's in the Clone Wars movie and animated TV show. The Star Wars animated TV show. He's the voice of Palpatine.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Of course, this being the cold open for our discussion on Mouse Hunt. So he's the wise man as he's credited.
Right.
Yeah.
He is then basically explains to Ash, the Book of the Dead is the only thing that can get him home and back to his own time. And that he's going to have to go on a quest to find said book.
Which gets like a, God damn it.
Like, yeah, it can't be easy. You can't just already have it.
No, I can't. I haven't been able to catch a break in the entire decade of the 80s. Why would the 90s be any different?
Why would the
1300s be any different?
This is also where we get another like Deadite moment where he's having this discussion about the book and trying to get home and things like that. And then there's a woman who is, because Ash is being like waited on by like 3 women. They're like feeding him grapes and like fanning him.
He's changed.
Yeah.
He's now wearing like a linen shirt.
Right.
Yes.
Right. He looks like a romance novel cover.
Yes. Sam Raimi said that Bruce Campbell's the one that the girls wanted to look at.
That's true.
Now they want to feed him.
And Sheila comes in and she is, because she was very like upset with Ash, having not known him, but he came in with Henry the Red's men, and her brother was killed, so she assumes that he had a hand in it. Just the one, because the other's a chainsaw. And she's now changed her tune.
You knew that was a good joke.
Yeah, thank you.
That was good. You knew it. I could see it. That was good.
And while they're having this little moment, because he's very like dismissive of her, I'm just like, no, you were like throwing rocks at me earlier. You don't get to come in here now. There's a woman who's like making a stew or something, and all of a sudden the stew is spilled on the floor, and the camera is like shakenly tilting up to her, and then she, much like Cheryl in The Evil Dead, whenever she's first revealed, her head whips around. She's got the white-out eyes of a Deadite, and she starts the "You shall die, we shall feast upon your souls," and floating around the room like, all these movies have that moment.
Right.
Which that actress, it's strange that she's playing this little part, because I don't even know if you see her face possessed.
Yeah.
But she's played by Patricia Tallman, who was Barbara in the Night of the Living Dead remake in 1990.
Okay.
Now, I wanted to save this for later, but I think it's better to just throw it in now, because I don't know if you know this or not. but in the Night of the Living Dead remake, she plays Barbara, and then her brother, Johnny, is played by Bill Moseley from, Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Everything
2
Rob Zombie's ever made,
and Rob
right.
Zombie stuff. Bill Moseley is in this movie.
Is he seriously?
Yeah.
Who?
He plays at the end when the big battle is happening. You have Evil Ash.
Right.
His little like second in command, like his captain,
Uh-huh.
who there's two Deadites who ride up on horses. One of them is clearly just a puppet of a skeleton, and the other one is like got an eye patch.
Yeah.
That is Bill Moseley.
Is it serious? How old was he?
I don't know. I mean, if he was, I don't know.
He has to have been fairly young.
Yeah. I mean, this is what, this is like 10 years after Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yeah. But I mean, in Texas Chainsaw 2, he's young.
Yeah. But yeah, it is like, you wouldn't know it. You can't tell it's him in that makeup, but I just love that little fact.
Oh my God, it is him. We'll have to post this. We'll have to make a point to post this on social at some point, because that's amazing. I'm glad you shared that with me.
I knew you'd like that.
Yeah, it comes from a zombie movie, which means it's in some way bad.
Right. Well, I knew that you would never have seen that movie.
No, and I never will.
Oh, you will.
No. Again, I said this in our episode 0, and I'll say it again. If you ever, listener at home, see a title of a movie that we're going to cover on the Third Channel podcast, and it is a zombie film, somebody else will be hosting it with Derek, and I will not be. I will be running down the street going, no, 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 no. And I will be missing in a fugue state for many days.
And then I love that, like, as soon as he shoots the witch dead, Merlin, or the wise men, I don't think they ever call him Merlin. He literally just slides back into frame and like continues his sentence.
Yeah.
It's the most like cartoony thing, which is just a taste of what's about to happen.
Yeah. It's, well, now that this is done, next line of dialogue.
Yeah. We get a fantastic montage that kind of references back to them building the chainsaw hand in Evil Dead 2, with them building Ash's metal hand.
Yes.
So he has now won the favor of both Sheila and the blacksmith.
Yes.
And so they it's the same sort of like
It's important to note,
zooms.
though. It's important to note, not Lord Arthur.
No. He still is like
Nephew of King Arthur, I guess.
you think?
We can't come up with a different
I
reason.
have no idea.
But yeah, he's still our like secondary antagonist.
Yeah.
He still doesn't like Ash, but the blacksmith loves him. The metal hand's a good prop.
Yes, it is. You see him like crush like a goblet with
Yeah.
it, and then he does the push it on his face groovy line. I just love that it's such a shot for shot play off of the chainsaw hand montage. This is also where like Sheila is talking to him and like trying to get him to stay, and he says the line, "Come on, give me some sugar, baby."
Yeah.
Which Bruce Campbell talks about how like he thought that was the dumbest line ever. And Sam Raimi was like, no, you got to say it. He like came up with it on the day and was like, no, you got to say that. You got to say that. And again, it's just two friends like picking at each other.
Because that is the stupidest line when you think about it, because what sugar means nothing to her.
Yeah.
Baby, did they call people baby back then? I would imagine not.
Yeah, I don't know.
That seems very much a the Fonz thing.
Hey.
Yeah. Baby. Cut that. No, leave it in. I don't know. You decide. And then what if you do decide to leave it in, leave all this in too.
Next, they head out on horseback into what's called, I believe it's called Vasquez Rocks. And I don't know if you picked up on this. It's kind of the first time, like they ride out of the castle and then you see them come, and it's these rocks that are at like this angle. They jut up.
Yeah.
And they're this famous area that is used in a ton of movies, but probably most famous that we would know is like it was used in the episode of Star Trek, the original series, where Kirk fights the Gorn.
The Gorn.
But I love to see it pop up in things.
Sure.
It's just one of those landmarks that, obviously has a striking look to it. And that's the reason why people keep, shooting movies in front of it. This is also where they stop and they're going to send Ash off on his own. And so the wise man, he explains that, he's got to go out to this graveyard to find the Book of the Dead. And before he is able to pick it up and bring it back to them, before he touches it, he has to say the 3 words. Those 3 words are Klaatu, Verata, Nikto, which is it's similar to the words Klaatu, Barada, Nikto, which is from the 1951 sci-fi film The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, okay.
So that's actually where Sam Raimi pulled those from. And in that movie, I think they're the only words that can stop the robot from doing whatever he's doing. I've never seen Day the Earth.
I have also not seen that.
But you also see that it pops up in a lot of pop culture, those words.
Okay.
And it's funny because, again, Ash is doing that thing of he's a blowhard and he knows everything. And so the wizard is like, I cannot stress enough. If you do not say these words exactly how I am saying them, it is going to end badly for all of us.
Yeah.
And Ash is just like, yeah, I got it.
Which, of course, leads to him saying the funniest line ever, which is, well, I said most of it.
Maybe I didn't say every little single, syllable, but I said the words.
As he says necktie instead of Nikto. I feel like that's got to be an improv line.
Yeah, it seems like it. As he rides off on his own, that's where we get another, the evil force cam. The shaky cam chases him through the woods, but now he's on horseback. Trees are splitting apart. They're being knocked down. Just like they're splitting apart like the doors of the cabin. He ends up falling off the horse at one point. He tumbles down a hill. He falls into a puddle, just like in Evil Dead 2. There is this amazing shot of him running and it's a low angle shooting up at his face as he's running, and these bushes, these branches and stuff are smacking him in the face on either side. And in the commentary they explain that they didn't have any sort of running rig, so that is just Bruce Campbell running in place.
Yeah.
And then there are 2 people, I guess I'm sure you can guess who at least one of them is, who is just smacking Bruce in the face on either side as he runs in place.
I'm going to guess those 2 people are Sam and Ted Raimi.
I know it's Sam. I don't know who the other one is, but if I had to guess, probably.
I feel like if given the opportunity, it's probably Ted.
I mean, it would be his 5th role.
Okay, if we made a movie and I was the director, right? And the whole point of the movie was to pick on you.
Right.
Right.
Which is how I expect it to go.
And I put Calvin in a bunch of roles in that movie. It's if I'm oh, well, we didn't have a rig, so I just need you to kind of jog in place. I'm going to hit you with this stick to simulate you running past trees. Calvin in a heartbeat would be like, oh, me too. You're all right, come on.
Okay, you're right. Yeah. You're right. Then he gets to the windmill, which is whenever he first walks up to the windmill, you see him from a distance. He's running up because the force is chasing him. And that apparently is a foreground miniature that they're using force perspective. So the miniature of this windmill is very close to the camera. And you're then seeing him walk by in the background, but because of the way that it's shot, it looks like it's on the same plane. So it looks like he's walking up to the windmill.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is where we get, I believe this is where we get the
This isn't the Looney Tunes bit that I was referring to. The Looney Tunes bit that I'm referring to is with the Necronomicon later on. Right. This is both the silliest, most fucked up Gulliver's Travels, weird shit, and then also the most disturbing visual effect of all time. Okay. So, yeah, he is in the windmill, searching around, mirror, and remember the last film, the first film, the mirror is a watery surface. And then the second film, his reflection reaches out to strangle him. And in this film, the mirror shatters and all of the reflections of him from all of the different pieces of mirror come out of the mirrors and they're tiny him. And when I say tiny, I mean like they're a few inches tall. And their voices are like super.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Hold on. Because we have this effect and there's no better time to use it.
So, like, Ash is running around, and he's like, and he's
making all kinds of fucked up noises. And it's amazing. And he's trying to like kick them and like get them away from him. And at one point, he's like stomping towards one of them. And it's like a fee, fi, fo, fum situation.
He's singing, he's singing London Bridge is Falling Down.
Falling down. And it's like, no!
And then the little Ash like tumbles onto the ground, and then he picks up a nail, and Ash steps on the nail. And then like, reacts back in horror as stepping on a nail. They stab him with like a fork, which to them is a giant prop.
Right.
And what's funny about this whole sequence is like they keep shooting, there's like 2 or 3 Ashes on screen at a time. And so what it is Bruce Campbell is one of those. It's whoever kind of your hero Ash in that little shot is going to be, whichever one's going to be facing the camera. And then the other 2 or 3 are always like guys who are like his body doubles, and they just put prosthetics so that they kind of look like him, but they keep their heads turned away from the camera for the most part. And so it allows them to have a whole bunch of little Ashes running around. They shoot at him with his shotgun.
Yes.
They like knock him over, and he falls face first onto like the stove, and then he has to use the like shovel to like pry his own face off of the stovetop.
And then he's fine.
Yeah.
He doesn't have horrific 3rd-degree burns.
Right.
He's fine.
Right.
At one point, he is knocked unconscious. He wakes up, and he has been tied to the floor. Immediately releases himself.
But not before one of the Ashes dives down into his mouth, and 2 other Ashes like hold his nose closed and his mouth open so that he has to swallow the little Ash.
And then he goes and he gets a thing like a kettle of boiling water, and he drinks it. Again, he suffers 0 horrific burns. And it's just the steam and the steam whistle noise and him being like, you like that? It's just so fucking unhinged.
And I mean, I have to assume that effect is like dry ice.
I'm sure.
Because it's smoking the whole time that he's doing it, but he's pouring this quote unquote boiling water down his mouth. But then I think this is what leads to the most horrific.
He starts to scratch his shoulder, and it's the scratching that makes it gross. Because if it were just the effect, it would be one thing, but it's him reacting to it in a tactile sort of relatable way. He starts to scratch his shoulder, and it's like, it doesn't get rid of the itch. So he scratches it again, and then it's more frantic and more frantic and more frantic. And then he tears his shirt away, and an eyeball opens up on his shoulder, and it's a good effect.
Yeah.
It looks like flesh. The eye is spinning around. It's really a good effect.
Yeah. It's pretty gnarly.
It's disgusting. I fucking hate it. I play a lot of Resident Evil games, and Resident Evil games have an obsession with eyeballs. I mean, from the original, and especially 2. 2 is where it gets really obscene. But they, if you're unaware, Resident Evil is a game where a pharmaceutical corporation basically creates biological weapons. And those biological weapons are essentially either undead zombies, or it is they create, they make this drug that changes your genetics, and it moves your body around, and it creates new tissue. Those like, it's so gross. The tumors that like when dissected and opened, they have like eyes and teeth and hair and stuff that grow in them because of your genetic code. Same thing. So a lot of the monsters, a lot of final bosses in Resident Evil grow eyes in places. And that's what it reminded me of. And it was just like, also for anybody who's about to leave a comment about the fact that 20 minutes ago, I said I would never do an episode with a zombie movie, but then I'm fine playing Resident Evil games. Shut up. You son of a bitch. I know. I don't need to hear it from you. I don't even know you. Or if I do, I don't need to. I probably do. We don't have a lot of fans. I don't need to listen to this. Okay?
I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, I know. Because I saw a twinkle in your eye, and I was like, yeah, because you always give me shit because I love The Last of Us.
I know, but I was going to move past it.
well, let's move all the way past it. Let's keep talking about this so I don't have to feel bad about myself.
That little eye grows into a head.
And that's a good bit where it's like he's like backed up and running around and the head is still there looking at him. Because when it's grown out, it's like they do like the Parent Trap, sort of one and one, and they're filmed and then the film is spliced together.
Right.
But this is clearly a rubber head, but it looks good.
Yeah.
It's like dated, but it isn't because it's a timeless effect.
Well, and they know when to do which effect.
Right. And it's just because it's got that crazy smile plastered on its face. So when he's running, it's just bouncing up and down. It's like, that looks so good. It's so stupid.
He keeps like, I love that because they run out and they shoot it as like two plates and he's playing against himself. But like he starts doing Three Stooges bits of like poking himself in the eye and stuff. And the bad Ash side of it at this point is like, at one point is like, I'm blind. And then like looks at good Ash and winks. And it's like, he's just absolutely losing his mind. What is going on?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, because you've got the whole sequence in 2 where like he's laughing and he's doing the little dance with the lamp and stuff. And that's a funny bit. But in this one, it's like, that isn't even him. It's like the demon possessed version of him, but it's also growing out of his body. But then it's also doing Bruce Campbell physical like bits. Yeah. So it's like, we have lost any touchstones that this movie could possibly have. We are floating around the gravityless chamber of this movie, and it is both rewarding and also like, because I watched this movie 3 times this week, and by the third final time of watching this, which was today, it was just like we get to this sequence and it's the eyeball off puts me, and so then the whole sequence today, I was just like, oh man, like this is so bizarre. Let's get past this. Like it's just so crazy.
He keeps growing and they end up splitting into 2 separate Ashes.
Yes.
And so you have, you're good Ash and I'm bad Ash.
Yeah.
And he does a little dance.
Yeah.
Calling him a goody little two shoes. And he's doing the like winding up with one fist to then punch him in the face with the other fist.
It is away from the fucking Three Stooges.
Yeah.
That's more like the Popeye noise, but
I get what you mean.
Who cares?
Yeah.
You got it.
And Ash eventually, good Ash, finally just gets sick of that happening and shoots bad Ash in the face.
Yeah.
With the shotgun.
Yeah. Like he did 2 movies ago to his own sister.
Which is actually it's a funny callback then, because the next sequence is he chains up evil Ash like he did with Linda, I believe, in The Evil Dead. It's the same sort of matching, taking puts him down on the table. He takes these chains across and latches, tightens all that down, and then he gets the chainsaw and he brings it down into frame. And I had never put together why, like this little montage, it keeps showing us like a shot and then it flashes to black and then back up to a new shot, black, over and over again. And what it is he's doing it outside of the windmill. And so it's supposed to represent the moon light shining down and being cut off, being blocked by the windmill as it's passing.
Okay. All right. That's I like that.
Yeah. It's an artistic choice.
A level of detail that was otherwise unnecessary for Army of Darkness.
Yes, that is true. He hacks up evil Ash. He buries him. Much like the Deadites in the earlier films, his head can still talk.
Yeah.
And Ash does the same thing whenever he buries him. He fills in the hole. He makes a cross. He takes the time to make a cross for this grave. He then finds the graveyard. And this is also like an amazing set because it almost, in a weird way, it almost looks like the model graveyard set in Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Except this isn't supposed to look like a fake model.
Right.
But part of it.
Nice fucking model. Hong Kong.
Nice.
Thank you.
But sometimes it's a set. Sometimes it's a miniature. Sometimes it's that foreground miniature, and then Ash or Bruce Campbell is standing on like a platform way behind it, but because of the way that it's shot, like it crosses the horizon, and he looks like he's standing on the miniature set. Really impressive stuff here. And he gets up to the giant like stone table in the middle of this, or altar in the middle of this graveyard, and there are 3 books.
Yeah.
3 Necronomicons.
And this is where a literal Looney Tunes bit happens. He's got to find out which one it is.
And they all look the same.
Yes.
But they don't look anything like the books from Evil Dead 2 or Evil Dead 1.
And the book from Evil Dead, The Evil Dead, looks nothing like the book from Evil Dead 2. And I think the book from Evil Dead 2 is probably this is the one that you've seen.
Yeah. It's my favorite. It's the one that I have a pillow of.
Yes. And then now you have, and that pillow, by the way, bound in human skin, but you have these 3 books, and each of them is like, it's like, let's find out what's behind door number 1. It's like the mystery door game wherein he opens the first one, and it is there's no better way to say it. It's like the book is stuck to the pillar that it's on because he opens it and it becomes like a giant vacuum. Yeah. It becomes like a wormhole, and he gets like, his face is getting sucked in, and he tries to pull it away, and then
his hand is like stretching like rubber.
Yes. And then eventually he is sucked into the book bodily, and it slams shut. I think you hear a gulp. I can't remember. It slams shut, and then it bursts back open, and he climbs out. And then they have done this makeup effect, very Beetlejuice, which is funny because we just mentioned about the miniature, but it's very
that's 2. We got to be careful. We said his name twice.
Okay.
Go on.
All right. Beetlejuice.
No.
And then you have the most disappointing thing in the world, which is Michael Keaton now shows up and does the same kind of performance of Beetlejuice. And it's disappointing. It's lackluster. But so not lackluster are these makeup effects. Because Bruce Campbell has a big nose and a big chin. Yeah. And now he looks like the Crimson Chin from the Fairly Odd Parents. His chin is the length of a forearm, and his nose is the length of a chin. It is insane.
He looks like Mac tonight. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
It was like in the late 80s, early 90s, I want to say. It was like this rebrand of McDonald's.
Okay.
And there's a character, and he has a crescent moon for a head.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I believe in the commercials he's played by Doug Jones, if I'm not mistaken.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
So that's a really good pull because it does look like him. But that's what I was saying Beetlejuice for. This is the new set of 3, by the way. Beetlejuice. Is he looks like Adam. Yeah. And he's got like, his face has been lengthened. And it is so funny because he literally is like he's re-straightening his head.
And like each time that he does it, there's a different like appliance.
Effect, right. And it's amazing. But that is that's Ash, folks. Like, it is the most insane cartoon I've ever seen. That's what we meant in the beginning, that this isn't a horror movie. Because so far, the only thing that I would actually constitute as like horror is the eyeball growing out of his shoulder.
Yeah.
We are 40 minutes into this movie. We are most of the way through it. And that's been it.
Pretty much.
And that's great. Because who cares?
The only thing that this movie is really lacking is Ash never runs off of a cliff and then realizes he's standing over air and then falls.
Oh, you know what I was about to say? I was about to add on to that bit of Ash also never is like driving towards a tunnel, and then the entrance of the tunnel is been drawn on by Wile E. Coyote or by the Roadrunner. But that's how the second movie opens.
Yeah, pretty much opens that way.
Evil Dead 2 opens with an exact replica of the Wile E. Coyote tunnel painting. But the second book is not nearly as creative. It just bites the shit out of him.
But this, and then it flies around, and it's like stop motion at times. It's a puppet at times. But it does remind me, you referenced this last week, the
Monstrous Book of Monsters.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it makes me think of.
Which is funny because I take that note. We mentioned it in the discussion. I'm watching this one the next day, and it's like, ah, damn it, I wasted a reference. But yeah, it behaves very similarly.
But my favorite part about this interaction with the second book is before he goes for it, he leans over to that book, which the second book is over on the right. So he leans over to the right book and he stops. He turns back to the center book and he goes to reach for that one and he stops again. And then he gives he wags his finger at it like, oh, I see what I know it's you. You're going to get, okay. And then he goes back to the right book and immediately it bites his
the
fingers
shit out of him.
But it's that little twinkle in his eye and
oh, I got it.
Finger wag of I figured you out.
Well, and that's exactly what that's what his job is in the Evil Dead, is to think I've got it. And then he has to chop off his arm with a chainsaw. Or he has to swallow a little version of himself that turns into a whole version of himself.
Yeah.
But that he finds the book that doesn't bite him or try to wormhole him.
And he remembers that he has to say the words.
He just doesn't know what the fuck they are. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen, he had to remember 3 words. And what it serves as is we are watching him fucking struggle with 7 syllables. And he can't get it right. He can't get it right. He can't get it right. And we're sitting there as the audience and we're going, well, obviously he gets it right.
Yeah.
The movie has a climax. The movie has, an ending, a third act structure. He's got to get it. And then he just fucking doesn't. And then he leaves.
He tries to cover it up with a cough. But my favorite part there is that then he just calls out of just okay. Well, there, I said them, all 3 words. You heard it. So I'm going to pick
leaving.
up this book now.
like that the evil force is well, okay.
I guess he said it.
All right.
And that's where I've watched this movie several times this week. And this is the part that makes me laugh every single time I see it, because everything goes awful from here on out for Ash as he tries to leave this graveyard, and tombstones start exploding out of the ground. Skeleton hands burst up from the ground and grab him, knocking him down and then holding him. And then it is just every Three Stooges bit of grabbing him by the lip and hooking him there, picking his nose,
boxing his ears,
poking him in the eye. And then whenever they try and do it again, he puts his hand in the way. And so then 2 hands from the outside come in and poke him in the eyes separately. But my favorite part of the whole thing is the camera, Dutch angle real tight onto his face, super close. And he reacts to something off screen of just oh no. And then 8 hands come in and punch him all at the same time. It is the dumbest thing ever.
Not only is it dumb, but it's also extra dumb because, and I'm skipping ahead for just a second, but he gets back to the castle having just been absolutely obliterated. He's been fucking Bugs Bunny at the opera for 20 minutes. He gets back to the castle and the wise man's like, did you do it? And he's like, yeah, I did it. It's fine. I did the thing that I was supposed to for the most part. And not, oh yeah, I guess I didn't because I just had my shit pushed in by a bunch of fucking stop motion skeletons.
Yeah, the blacksmith is disappointed by that. Yeah. I just
really care about his reactions. Dude,
I love that blacksmith so much. I love that every time that Ash does something, he gets a reaction out of this guy.
Yeah,
he wins and loses his approval several times throughout the film.
It's there's a rule in Star Wars where if somebody drops a lightsaber, there's a reaction shot to dropping the lightsaber where it goes. That's the rule in Army of Darkness, is that whatever Ash does, there's a reaction shot to the blacksmith. And Derek, he loves it.
I note it every time.
Let's start a hashtag. Hashtag Derek loves blacksmiths.
I don't know if that'll take off.
None of this is, man. None of this has.
Please like and subscribe.
Please. We want this to mean something.
So Sheila is back and is, happy to see Ash, trying to get him to stay, trying to get him to be.
And he's just like, I said the fucking words, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
You promised you'd let me leave. Here's your fucking book. Tell me how.
And this is another like reiteration of like Arthur again is just like, I don't like this guy. I didn't trust him. We shouldn't have trusted him. The wise man's going to get what he wants.
And then a spooky flying stop motion deadite. It swoops in.
Mm-hmm.
It plucks our love interest up. And it takes her to go shave off her eyebrows.
Yes. Now, I do love that effect because it kind of is the now redone version of the last scene of Evil Dead 2 where the winged demon comes in.
Yeah, because that's rough.
Right.
That's rough, buddy. That's
this
awful.
one is part of it is stop motion. Even there's a part whenever the wide shot wherever it picks up Sheila, she and the demon are both stop motion in that. But then there's also like a full-size puppet, and then there is an actress and a stunt performer named Nadine Greiken. She was in the costume, and what's interesting about the way that costume is that it was built in a way that her arms could either be in the arms of the deadite or it could be in the wings. And so depending on what the shot needed, she could either move the hands to like hold Sheila or she could flap the wings from
That's
like a
pretty
different
cool.
shot. So I don't know. I just think the costume is very, very cool.
Yeah.
I would assume that one because it's not either Ash or Sheila. That's probably done by K&B.
Okay.
And we get a flash of lightning after Ash leaves the graveyard, and that springs evil Ash back to life out of his grave and reassembles his body. But he is, in true Deadite fashion, horribly like rotting.
Yeah.
And his face looks different than it did whenever he was buried. He just looked like evil Ash at that point.
Yeah.
He had been like peppered with the buckshot or whatever. But this is like
now it's like the meat of his entire lower jaw is exposed, and then he's like underbitten.
Yeah.
He's wearing a helmet.
Yeah. That helmet's awesome.
It is, but where the fuck did he get it?
I don't know.
He just found it down there. Ash happened to bury him next to awesome Mick Cool Helmet Big Dick guy in the ground. He was like, well, I'm going to take that helmet.
He begins raising the army of the dead.
Correct.
And it's this great shots of like skeletons digging other skeletons out of graves. A lot of puppetry, a lot of like skeleton models in the background who are just kind of put on like a motion where there's just like a rod that makes them do the same, like shovel move over and over again. But
the really puppeteered ones are great though, because they have like reactions to digging each other up.
Yeah.
Like, hey!
And like one of them like pops up into frame and like coughs, and it's got like cobwebs all over itself and stuff because it's been down there a while. The winged demon brings Sheila to evil Ash. Mm-hmm. And he repeats the line of "Give me some sugar, baby." Mm-hmm. Both the scene before when Ash says this and this scene are both extended in the director's cut. Like they are things that got trimmed out. I won't go too much into either of them, but Ash and Sheila do have a love scene in the director's cut. And then this one
is not as
no, it would get closer to us needing a trigger warning, so we're going to move right past it.
okay. Bye. There it goes.
But Sheila is now possessed,
and she's lost her eyebrows.
Yeah.
Her eyes are gross and white. She has like acid burn, like eyelid color, and yeah, her eyebrows are gone.
Yeah, and I mean it doesn't look like a ton of like makeup effect, but it does change her face enough that you kind of lose her in it.
She's a little, and that's something that I mentioned about
like in a good way.
Something I mentioned about the Evil Dead, which is as you continue to shellac these people in makeup and then eventually replace the actors and actresses of the Deadites with stunt performers or at that, just whoever you have, I guess, in the Evil Dead. it works to kind of dehumanize your character and turn them into something else. So I think that having her be nigh unrecognizable works for the plot of her having been so possessed at this point.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it does whenever she turns back and tries to trick Ash later, it kind of works to that advantage. Ash, having now watched his love be taken away, he gives a heroic speech.
Which is insane.
He tries to rally the troops of the few extras that they still had left on this set, apparently, which is what leads to you see Ted Raimi finally in this.
I was about to say, one of whom is our boy.
He is in the worst fake beard I've ever seen.
Ted Raimi is to Sam Raimi as Sean Gunn is to James Gunn.
Yes. That is a wonderful comparison.
Yeah. That makes me happy.
Ash gives his big speech. And who do you think the first one to side with Ash is?
Lord Arthur.
No.
Okay.
He is not buying it still.
Damn it.
But the blacksmith. The blacksmith loves what Ash is selling, okay?
Hashtag Derek loves blacksmiths.
So they begin this montage of them. I call it the Seven Samurai montage because they do the like training where he's like teaching them how to use a spear and he does like these movements and then you see the whole like
make a man out of you.
It's a bit like that.
Yeah.
They pull the Delta back out, his car, they open up the trunk, and in the trunk he has a Fangoria magazine.
Yes.
Which is Sam's reference back to, Fangoria, who have given rave reviews for all these movies and the productions of Sam's stuff. He also has a Dark Horse Presents 5th Anniversary special comic, which apparently is the first comic that featured Frank Miller's Sin City.
Okay.
It's the first story that came out of that. But then he also, like you mentioned earlier, he has a Chemistry 101 textbook.
Right.
And a book on steam power.
Yeah.
Just the things that he needs. So he and the blacksmith work on building the Delta.
They retrofit it.
Yeah.
Into like an engine of war.
They call it a death coaster in the commentary.
Hilarious.
They make, he teaches the wise man to make gunpowder, which has this funny little bit where like he doesn't understand what it is. And so he almost puts it over the candle.
Ash's hand. It's just like, no.
And then he like slowly like moves the candle away from him when he's looking the other way. I don't know. It's just Bruce Campbell has these amazing little like silent moments, acting moments in this movie that I really love. And then leads to the big battle with the Deadites.
Yes.
And so that is first. It opens with a skeleton band.
Yeah, this is more Jason and the Argonauts than Jason and the Argonauts. It's insane how many stop motion skeletons we see fighting extras.
Well, and that's what I love about it is that it is such a mix of all those techniques because it's stop motion.
Some of them are puppets.
And then some of them are people in costume to make them look like either kind of rotted corpses or skeletons. They're in armor. Some of them are on horseback.
Yeah.
The ones that are like in the front, whenever they're marching across the screen, the ones closest to the camera are there. There's like a trench that they dug, and so there are people down there having to walk and puppet them, like you would the Muppets.
Yeah. Well, and the movement of all of the skeletons is so Muppety. It's great. Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's the best. This is where we see Bill Moseley as the Deadite captain. And he and the other one ride off to start this battle. Honestly, I think that like Peter Jackson and the Lord of the Rings owes a lot for the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
To this battle right here.
Yeah.
It's a siege. You have, Ash and all of Arthur's men. He's trained up. And they're held up in this castle. You have the attacking force of the Deadites who outnumber them astronomically.
Yeah.
And then eventually, spoilers, but Henry's men arrive later coming over the hill to bring reinforcements, much like Gandalf comes on the dawn of the third day or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think
Jesus comes out of the tomb and he's like, "Sup, Gandalf?" And Gandalf's like, "Let's do it." And they ride out with giant eagles and Voldemort's there and he's like, "Here," and they tackle him and whatever. And it's crazy, dude. It's crazy shit.
That's the supercut I want to see.
Yeah.
It's just like every big battle scene just cut into one.
It's Gandalf with Jesus and Aragorn and all of the
Fellowship
and Ash versus the devil, Sauron, and evil Ash and Freddy.
I love it.
And Jason.
Ash should be like, "And my chainsaw."
And he'd be like, "Groovy."
Pretty much this is just a big battle scene.
Yeah.
My favorite parts of it are like after a while they get tired of like putting things to like, I don't know what they're called. The springboards that they use, like an explosion goes off and then it sends people flying. And the first couple times that it happens, they put like, piles of dirt or like a cart on its side or something to block those springboards. And after a couple of those, then they just give up and you just see the springboards in the movie.
It's great
that all the stunt performers are just like jumping off of and stuff. The skeletons basically they enter the castle at some point. They break down. The thing that Bruce loves to point out in the commentary is that right after the skeletons finally, breach the castle gate and they come in, there's a guy with a white beard who gets killed almost immediately, but there's like a close up on him when he dies. That is played by Bruce Campbell's dad.
Oh, that's sweet.
He gets to be in the movie.
And he dies.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the best way you can. If I was put in a horror movie, that's what I would want.
Presumably he's dead in real life as well.
Wow. You went real dark there.
Let's have a moment of silence for Bruce Campbell's dad. Okay. So it doesn't have to be a long one. He's not the famous one. We don't know him.
Yeah. I don't even know his name.
What's his name? Doug?
Yeah. Let's go with that. Sheila, she shows back up and Ash is in the
thing and he's about to run her over.
And it's got this propeller on the front that's just spinning and just like killing deadites left and right.
And he looks and he sees her and he's like, "Oh, damn it." He like yanks the wheel and dives off of it. And it's like, just run her over. You don't know her.
And also he's experienced deadites before. He knows this trick.
Yeah.
Why is he falling for it?
I don't know.
But the car crashes and this is an amazing, like, it's a bit where they just start literally throwing skeletons at Bruce Campbell from off screen.
Yeah.
And then he breaks one of them, like Bane breaks Batman's back and tosses it out of frame. And then he picks up another one and karate chops it and throws it off. And quite literally it's cast members just tossing skeletons at Bruce.
Yeah. And again, the only reason any of this works is because of Bruce Campbell.
Yes.
Yeah.
He just knows how to act.
His facial acting, his physicality. I mean, Doug Campbell taught him well, and we're proud of him. That sounds like the lead up to just saying Doug Campbell again, but no, sincerely, this only works because he is such a good clown.
Yeah. They have a dual sword fight down the stairs, which again is a bit like Legolas on the staircase there.
Yeah.
I was just waiting on Bruce to surf down on a shield.
By this point, it's important to note that Evil Ash has become a human eyeball still in sockets, spooky skeleton man.
Well, he's about to. They're fighting at this point, and he goes for the book because that's the whole thing. Is the Deadites are coming to the castle to try and get the Book of the Dead
because they're It's like, I think the line is like their hunger for the book is that's in or Evil Dead 2. It's like their hunger for the book is unsated. Like they have to grab the book.
Right. So that's their ultimate goal. That's the whole.
No, that is Army of Darkness. But it explains.
The wise man explains it earlier.
It's Sir Ian McKellen.
Ted Raimi is seen playing one of the soldiers fighting next to Arthur. He is stabbed to death. He's another one in there as well. literally he plays 4 different roles in this movie. And Evil Ash and Ash are fighting. There's a lot of, it's sword fighting. It's swinging around on ropes and things like it's very swashbucklery. And then Ash burns Evil Ash. And that's when he becomes like just a skeleton with the eyeballs.
Yeah.
Which now that we're saying it out loud, because we talked about this the other day, not on mic, the poster for Evil Dead 2 is a skull with Bruce
eyeballs.
Campbell's eyeballs in them. Like it looks like Bruce Campbell.
It looks like if you took a picture of Bruce Campbell and drew like a skeleton over it.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that's so funny.
This is like the closest that we've get with, and I don't know if that was on purpose.
It's as close as you can get to the poster of Evil Dead 2 without getting your skeleton's eyes wet.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sheila comes back in again. It's a constant change between being, evil and being not and being regular and whatever. Well, and Ash ends up, go ahead.
The way Ash saves the day here.
Right.
Is just the perfect, it is cartoonish and silly and overacted and stupid and amazing. He basically ties him to dynamite.
Yeah. So there's like these catapults that they've been shooting giant bags of gunpowder, explosive gunpowder from, and Evil Ash has the book.
Right.
And he knocks Ash down to the castle floor. And I think the torch that he had burned him with has already fallen down there and has lit the wick
of the bag of dynamite.
And so when Evil Ash jumps down, he jumps onto the catapult and he's like, I'm going to ride this thing out of here. I've got the book.
With his mouth chattering because now he's a fucking puppet.
Right. And Ash hacks his arm off and you get the spin through the air of the hand holding the book, and Ash catches that. And then he cuts the cable that's holding the catapult and it fires off. And then Evil Ash spins with this
like Team Rocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's an explosion and he is dead. Evil is defeated.
It's the reaction that he has of looking down and seeing the gunpowder and being like, it's just the eyeballs get all wide.
The eyes get wide. The jaw drops, and then his skull opens up and you see his brain inside, and it makes like a train whistle noise. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a cartoon.
It's a cartoon. This is a movie for children.
Bruce Campbell versus the Evil Dead, a cartoon. That's the whole thing. That's the whole subtitle. In parentheses, Evil Dead 3.
They've won. They've defeated the evil.
Yes.
And the wise man basically tells Ash
That's both.
that he has to drink 6 drops.
Well, really quickly.
Oh, go ahead.
What does Lord Arthur think of him now?
He's pretty good.
All right, yeah. Well, that blacksmith
Loves him.
loves him.
Loves him.
Sheila?
Alive.
Yeah.
But she's back to normal.
The wise man says, this is the way you get back. You have to drink. Which is funny because I mentioned this very vaguely in the beginning about the bad ending is drinking too many. But you have to drink 6 drops of this potion. You'll sleep preserved until the 80s.
And you have to say the words exactly.
Right.
To return to your time.
Yeah.
And then we come back to our final sequence of the movie, which is kind of the bookend with the S-Mart stuff at the beginning.
Yes.
Ted Raimi is there as one of his coworkers at S-Mart. And there is a woman in the store who, very much like the woman making the stew earlier, suddenly becomes a Deadite and begins flipping around through the air like a gymnast. And Ash does an amazing, smashes through and grabs that, the
non-Remington.
Yeah. Shotgun. And he's shooting at the woman, the Deadite. He does this amazing, throws it up into the air, hops onto a cart, and then catches the gun again, and he's firing it.
As the cart is moving forward.
It's the most ridiculous. And that's all reshoots.
But then
because they had to redo it.
Then you get another. The movie ends with another very famous Ash Williams line, which is he grabs a random coworker and says, "Hail to the king, baby," and just starts making out with her. And it is so out of nowhere.
Yeah. It is truly like they wanted a big hero moment for the end.
Yeah.
And I should say they, being Universal Pictures, wanted a big hero moment for the end of this film. So they made them shoot all this. And that is what we ended up with.
Hail to the king, baby is such a good line. It is both incredibly funny and ridiculous. Like because it doesn't bookend the story at all.
No. Because we didn't see in The Evil Dead, it's not like we started in an S-Mart and then he was like, "Hey, Linda, you want to go on vacation with me and with my friends?" Like,
so then it ends with him being in the S-Mart. No, it's this movie starts with that. So it ends with it. But then he says a line that's like, I guess the line is supposed to be like, "Hail to," like, because I came from the Middle Ages. So, there's that. But there wasn't a king. There was Lord Arthur.
right.
Not King Arthur.
I guess.
There's no king to hail to. Except the blacksmith. Blacksmith, king of your heart.
Man, I wish they would have had the blacksmith as somebody in the S-Mart later, like kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Like, and you were there.
And you were there most of all. Oh, because he's the Tin Man.
Yeah.
Because he's a blacksmith. That's good.
That's great. We did it. We figured out a joke.
It took us how many episodes?
Too many. The bad ending or the director's cut ending is you kind of mentioned it before, but they give him the elixir, they wheel his car into this cave and they close him in, and then he is drinking he's counting how many drops of the elixir that he's taking, and he hears a noise part of the way through, and so he takes an extra one on accident. And you get a quick montage of him sleeping in the back of the car, and he's like, over the years, they keep flashing forward, and he grows a long beard, long hair, cobwebs all over him. He eventually wakes up and crawls out, opens up the cave, crawls out of the rubble. He's all excited because he sees there's like a shopping cart and he goes, "Oh man, man-made stuff. Oh, I'm back, baby. I'm back." And then he looks out and there's just like a matte painting of a destroyed London. And we are in the post-apocalypse of like a wasteland. And that's an idea that would be revisited later. At the end of this is spoilers for Ash versus the Evil Dead, because this movie did well enough, but never garnered a sequel at the time.
Yeah.
They've talked about it for years. And after the success of the remake / reboot in 2013, they got back together and they made a TV show that ran for 3 seasons called Ash versus the Evil Dead. It started in 2015, I believe. And it picks up 30 years later. Ash is still working at S-Mart, and the Book of the Dead comes back into play, and he goes on another adventure to stop the Deadites. And I've seen that show. I think it's too much for us to kind of cover on this podcast. Maybe in the future we'll revisit and try and figure out a way of really breaking that down and talking about it.
I think it's important to note, though, when we're talking about doing a film franchise, we are talking about the franchise of films. If they have done TV or spinoffs in that way, that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking more about Friday the 13th has hits however many movies. We're not going to discuss if we're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, we're talking about the movies. We're not talking about the weird cable television program.
Freddy's Nightmares.
Yeah. Right. This is more of a show directly revolving around movies with a 3-act structure.
Yeah. So after that, there were some talks of, and we may touch on this at the end of next week's episode as well, but there were some ideas to do an Army of Darkness 2, some actual talks, or a possible crossover movie between Ash and the survivors of the Evil Dead 2013 film.
Okay.
Because, you know, he's still out there, and Sam is, you know, they've just over the years, they've played with that idea of like dusting it off and bringing Ash back for something.
I'd like that. That's funny because you mentioned the remake, and that's obviously, you know, per the schedule of order release. That's what we're going to talk about next week.
Right.
And I'm excited because I like that movie an awful lot.
Yeah, same here.
I really enjoy that movie. But it marks a special sort of milestone for us, which is that's the first remake that we'll be talking about on the show.
Yeah.
You've got like Scream 4, which isn't a remake. It's a long hiatus, a dental vacation, if you will, of Scream movies.
Well, yeah, and it's like a send up of remakes.
Yeah, but this one is a true to blue remake. This was to serve as the original told again. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I struggle. I go back and forth on calling it a remake or a reboot, a reimagining. But yeah, I cannot wait to talk about that movie next week.
Yeah. It sucks because this is the first, we were basically saying between The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, and now Army of Darkness, we would end every episode with, this was the craziest movie I've seen until, and then like this episode or the one before it, we'd start with until we saw, this one. But, we don't really have a reason to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't really work the same way with this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, because it's just, we watched this movie and that was the last movie we had seen until.
Thanks for tuning into the Third Channel Podcast. Please, if you have the time, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps.
You can follow us on social media at Third Channel Podcast, and you can find me online at thatdrosenberg.
You can also reach out to us at thirdchannelpodcast@gmail.com, where we check every message, we swear. Third Channel is hosted by PJ Minette
and Derek Rosenberg. Theme song and audio engineering by Fly Guy Ty.
The logo designed by Bell DeVelco.
Episode artwork by Nathan Walkington.
Keep it tuned right here to the Third Channel for all things horror. And remember, don't touch that dial.
Egg salad and eggs.